Well, that's just embarrassing. Uh, uh, the timer ran out before I could get back, which, you know what? Story of my life. Uh, uh, hello, good evening, all of that to everyone, whoever's watching. It has been one absolute fucking hell of a week. We'll just keep it that. I'll jump into it in a bit. I'm just trying to get this monitor to work. So yeah, my days are going incredibly well at this point right now. Let's get this changed over to there because and it seems to be working. I have audio. I have it working, but for some reason this damn screen will not switch on. Technical difficulties, what can you do? Um yeah, tonight is just actually a chill night at this point. It has been a very, very busy week. Since the last stream, the Gears of War stream last week, uh it has been, hey Sue, thank you very much. Yeah, the appearance was a bit out of the blue and everything. Um yeah, thank you. It's since the stream last week, my mother-in-law's gone in for open heart surgery. My father-in-law's had to have day ops and then uh uh runs to, get things looked at and everything else, new staff starting, uh like other staff, like here, there, and everywhere. It has been one absolute motherfucker of a week. So we've gone from managing the house with four people at home to having my mother-in-law basically at a commission, and that is one hell of a week to kind of deal with. Um, okay, let's see. Oh, I can hear myself. Wait, I'm on such a slight delay. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. um, it's it in terms of everything. Hold on. Uh, hold on. I am just trying to bring up my little list for tonight. Okay, so we've got those switched off. I'm trying to. Let's go to this. Okay. So in terms of everything tonight, it's just more chill, chatting news and everything else because I honestly haven't had the time to jump in and actually do anything. In all honesty, for so much stuff, it's just been out of the blue. Trying to honestly catch up has been one of the weirdest things of the last week or two. Uh, so I'm trying my best here, but um, pretty much the interesting aspect for a lot of stuff happening out there is that uh, and the the Wolverine issue. Now, people have been calling it the Wolverine issue, and I'm calling it that out of respect of the people who don't think the game is looking great or anything else. Everybody has their own opinions and thoughts on it. Is it just no, I shouldn't say is it just me. Um, I think that there are some reasonable takes out there by a lot of people, which is that it's not what they were expecting. And I think that's probably the best way to consider it, that Wolverine didn't show off in a way that made people go, wow, like the same as the first time that they saw uh Spider-Man, like Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4. That game showed off so well in its first kind of gameplay sequences, previews, the trailers prior to that. It's I think it I think it is more that people were expecting the same, and because it didn't deliver in that same way, that same punch, uh, it feels like it's a letdown. And I can understand it, but it's also very much a different game. Spider-Man's traversal, the way you go from point to point, is half the game. And I think it's probably like 90% of the fun. Like, who doesn't love swinging through the city? But Wolverine isn't that sort of character. Like, you wouldn't really think of how does Wolverine get from, you know, spot A to spot B. It's not really something that you consider, because it's not like he has a, like, you consider a motorbike, or maybe you know, he jumps in a fucking 2014 Honda Accord and drives to the next location. That's not exactly the same as having the having a kind of a traversal method where everything in the city is something that you can't do normally, that is expressed through the game, which is that fantasy. And yeah, Soob has it dead in one on the YouTube chat. Wolverine's going to be a fun action game, a fun action adventure game like 007. And I think that could potentially be where people are seeing it just that little bit differently. They're expecting the the big action splendor that you had with, like, I think for a lot of players, a lot of people, I remember talking about the opening to Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5. Uh hey, over in Twitch chat, Retro All, hi. Hi, how are you doing? Um it it would it would be interesting to see, especially for Wolverine, if the sequences are similar to the way you would consider Uncharted, maybe. That it's not where are from? Australia. Australia is the best way to put it. Um it would be interesting to see if Wolverine is going to end up more in, like, 007 is a damn good example. The idea of sequences that kind of build upon, and maybe that Uncharted flavor that gives you a really big push, that really pushes you into the realm of, it's kind of the build up. You start chasing someone down, and then the kind of sequences, and then it's a push into an even bigger sequence with a bigger enemy, and then you have your kind of hanging from the train, hanging from the train over a cliff edge, or falling out of the back of a flying air, a flying plane. Like, I think it could be that, but because it didn't show off that, maybe people didn't feel that it had that same sort of flavor. Like, it's one of those few times where I generally understand where people are coming from, but this, I it could be an age thing. This is the first time where I'm kind of going, well, it's a preview. Like, they're going to show off things to tantalize, but they're not going to. I look like Nicolas Cage. I'm going to take that as a compliment. So if I look as good as Nicolas, oh, well, yeah, if I look as good as Nicolas Cage when I'm his age, then I'll consider that a win in my life. Um, I'm definitely thinning the hair like Nicolas Cage, except I haven't got the giant bird wig that they put on him in The Knowing. If you know, you know. Um, the the interesting part is more previews. Nick Cage played a great Spider-Man. Spider-Man Noir. That is a damn good point. The that was from Sue Bagels in the YouTube chat. Uh, Spider Noir was surprisingly well done in that they let it play to the tropes and the intricacies of the kind of gumshoe detective noir films, but they didn't create that Ben Riley as somebody without flaws, without issues, which is a great juxtaposition to the idea of the Spider-Man. The Marvel heroes always tend to be they're a they can be a grand hero, but they've got their own failures. Um, and I think that they explored that really well with him, considering the intricacies in how he gets his powers and how he then interacts with the world and what drives him. They didn't make it just so kind of clean cut. They added they added issues because the way we connect with heroes is that we feel and see a little bit with them, and I think that's one of the great things that also, like, you can see when somebody's having fun. Like, nobody can ever say to Nicolas Cage that he doesn't look like he's just enjoying doing what he's doing. He finds the fun in everything, and you've got to love and respect that. Um, but yeah, the whole Wolverine thing, I'm very much of the opinion that a whole bunch of people jumping on it and going, it doesn't look as great, or it didn't catch me, or I'm worried. I think it's going to be one of those ones that, uh, like, people are saying, oh, it's looking like it's going to be a 7 out of 10, and I'm like, nah, I think it will do just fine out there. Um, Also, considering everything else, if people are getting their hands on PlayStation 5s and they need games for the kids, the choice is really going to be between, like, if your kids are, well, see, Wolverine isn't exactly the greatest PG sort of video game character. If anything, if you wanted a game for like this year, you'd wish that you had a Spider-Man game for the Christmas rush, because that'd perfectly tie in with Brand New Day and how well that's done. You'd line the kids up with it. It'd be a money printing machine, but it doesn't seem to be going that way for Insomniac. I'm not sure. Uh, but also, this is kind of the first. I think this is the first kind of big title. Uh, Hold on. I'm just going to look it up. I think this is the first title from Insomniac Games in full since Ted Price actually finished up. Let's have a look. Um 90% of the data. Yes, because Ted Price announced his retirement as CEO in January 25, left at the end of March 25, and then Ryan Schneider, Jen Hung, and Chad Dezern. And yeah, their previous release prior to that was Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and 23. Yeah, thank you for that, Sue. Yeah, so this is kind of their first step out. And one thing that I do know from people who've worked with Ted Price over the years is that while he generally ran as CEO, he spent a lot of time obviously with DICE and working with GDC, working with other developers. He was a very collaborative gentleman. But one thing that he liked to do was always to touch base and be basically that sounding board for the creation of games, and he was a stickler for detail about how characters move, how animation cycled, everything else. That, like, I think it was in one of the, uh, I think it was in an interview with Brian Intahara, where he spoke about like Ted would go in and pick up like those that feet, that running animation, those feet aren't planting on the steps. You need to fix that. And his point was always about the driver behind a game should always be that you are engaged with, there's the lull in a game where it's you go from one sequence area to another. So how do you keep people engaged? And it should always be story helps, dialogue helps, but it should always be that driving the character should be natural and feel fun. It's one of those things that when you consider Sunset Overdrive, which then led into Spider-Man, that was built around this idea of how can you do fun traversal, and they started with that idea and then built it into the very key part, which was then how they then made the game. And it then helped them understand that idea of traversal, speed, movement, kinetic motion, like how something and how you can animate something to move from a transition of front of like motion through the world to then also transition to movement and changing direction and changing your interactions with the world. Apologies, the dogs have shown up, so I have to pay tribute to the dogs. There we go, Piper. And there we go, Coda. Dogs require tribute, as always. So I do think, yeah, Insomniac, it I'm trying to think. Honestly, it's one of the things that was brought up. Jez Corden posted an article about gaming discourse earlier today. Now, I'll bring it up because he did. It's one of the it's one of these aspects. Now, he obviously brought up about GTA 6, Halo Campaign Evolved, the new Wolverine game. His kind of byline being, it feels like a contingent of the internet is actively hoping for games to fail these days. Is it a bubble? Has it always been like this? Has something changed? It's interesting that now there is more attention about how people speak on entertainment in the world. Now, obviously, with I do not remember him bringing it up, but there's obviously he did Christopher Nolan's the Odyssey. That obviously over the last week or two has copped a lot of it's copped a lot of flack. Now, whether you like the story of the Odyssey, whether you're a fan of Christopher Nolan, any of those things, it's still a case of those gaming with passion. Hello as well. G'day, sir. You jumping in on Twitch today? Um, the way that people are then tackling the idea of, now I hate using the word because I feel it's not descriptive of what the true issue is, but the idea of wokeism, that people are trying to push against ideas because it has a more inclusive ideal, is reductive because they're using it in a simplified manner to explain a more complex idea, but they don't know how to describe where their issue truly is. Or for some of them, they don't want to put the true name to it because people would go, no, you're a fucking prick, instead of going, you're dismissive or you're arrogant or uninformed. It would go straight to, you're a prick, you're a racist, you're a cunt. Hate is always louder than love, absolutely. And that's one of those points that Jez brought up in his article. And this is one of those few times where I'll bring it up because I generally don't like to talk about the hate. I try to understand and see, why would somebody have an issue with this? Like, where is the key? Like, where's that nugget of truth? There's always something in there. And it should always be a case of, if we understand it, then you can talk about it. If you can talk about it, then you can find, with reasonable people, you can find a middle ground, and you can kind of go, disagree on these things, but we kind of agree, like, this is good or this is better. I figure if you can find a point where you agree, then it's a very respectful back and forth that you can always have, where there's the give and take, and you know, disagree where you must. Um, don't compromise your own position, but disagree where you must, agree where you can, and work towards that point of communication. Because with communication, people feel engaged, and people feel more accepting to understand that, okay, this opinion may be different, but it then creates a back and forth. And if people feel that they're heard, that's where some great things can come from it. Um, One of the aspects for the Insomniac hate, I think, is that Insomniac are the first developer, or Sony owned developer, um, off off the off the starting track since the physical games issue came up. And, like, all due respect, I'm very much like Randall Thor. I'm a very digital player, but I absolutely respect physical games. And in fact, on that, my lovely copies, there are many, many, many more of these, but I actually played through and booted up Saints Row 2 physical, and have been playing Hunter the Reckoning on stream on occasion. I've got a whole shitload of 360 and original Xbox games. Just parts of collection games that I really love. I'm very much a uh digital game purchaser. Primarily because my job doesn't really allow me the time to go out to a store, buy games. It's so much easier to just, when I'm out on site or anything else, oh, this is coming out, cool, buy it through the app, download it to my console, it's there ready for me when I get home. But, and I think for anybody who's listening to this at any time, uh, there is very much, we all know that, we know that very specific element of when you have, I want to say this in a respectful way, but when you're, okay, so gaming with passion on Twitch. I like physical, but it's not my primary way of buying games. I would agree with that. That is probably, if I was to describe it, you've said it so much better than me. Um, the Like, growing up, okay, I just turned 42, so go back 25 years. Put me as a 15, 16-year-old kid. I couldn't, like, my parents made enough money. We were never short anything, but, you know, I I wasn't able to kind of have an after school job, so I'd have to work at my dad's business during weekends and school holidays to make money. So it was always the choice of, did I try to buy a brand new game for 100 Australian dollars? That's the price of a brand new game during the 90s, 100 Australian dollars. Or at EB Games, if I waited 3 months, and I could get that same $100 game at 70 or 60 or even 55, or once every 3 months, EB Games would hold a sale. It's a famous joke here in Australia. Like whenever you go past EB Games, they've always got a sale going on, and they would have pre-owned games like 2 for 50 or 2 for 65. And that's where I would get those brand new games from at that discounted price as a physical disc, because I could get them, play them if I really enjoyed them. I'd hold on to them in my collection. If I didn't like the game, I could then trade it in towards something else. And a lot of the physical copies of games like uh Sup Lordo, proud to announce that I've naturally developed Uncle Sneezes. Oh, yes. Yeah. So are you an Uncle Sneeze in terms of like massively blowing out everybody's eardrum around you, or the big draw in and then just a small little because there's two types of Uncle Sneezes. um this copy of Saints Row 2 is my copy from when it released uh on the 360. The one coming closer to blowing people's ears out. I, I'm I'm lucky in a sense. I don't like with a nose like this, you'd think I absolutely like people are deafened whenever I sneeze. Surprisingly not. I'm a conservative sneezer sometimes. From Gaming with Passion and Twitch, I usually get physical if I get a game on console day one, but most of the time I play on PC. The annoying thing about going full digital is that some third world countries will be affected because they usually rely on buying physical, then trading the game for another physical game. That is where I'm going with this. I got into gaming and have continued to be as passionate a gamer as your name clearly states. Um, and I think for like Sub and I have spoken quite often about like just you know there are some things that you stand for even though you don't stand behind them, you don't use them because you understand how much they meant in your growing up and how much they serve players out there. And pre-owned games, physical copies, and everything else are one of those things that I feel very strongly about. I know that Sony won't back down, and I absolutely understand the reasons why. However, the I think Insomniac, because they are that first cab off the rank in terms of a release, since that news, I think they are being unfairly tarred with this brush. But there is a belief from Sony that they will be able to weather this storm with no issue. And I think they're right because, and I'll give full credit to Colin Moriarty, this was a brilliant point that he brought up, which is that the entire discussion around, actually, I'm not really hearing anything on these, so I'm just gonna lose them. Let the hair go free. Look at all that gray. It's fantastic. It's the best thing ever. Um, the the point that he brought up was Sony previously would have major issues about the console gamer. They're the ones that they're worried about, the hardcore, um, because that's how they built their platform. But they've managed to get into the zeitgeist so solidly now that the casual gamer, the console gamers that are on PlayStation, and they're the ones playing Fortnite, COD, Roblox, the whole run of games like that. They're spending the money on Sony games, on Sony consoles, on DLC, on Robux, the whole run of things. That they are such a large percentage of the market that is where they're going because that's where the money is. And absolutely, it's the money. Like the growth of the markets are always determined by how you can actually make money and how you can succeed in there. Um, oh yes, another good point from Gaming with Passion. PSN does not function in 130 countries. Yes, I believe it is around 130. It could be more or less. Don't quote me on that. So they won't be able to play games when they're able to play via physical. That that's one of those aspects that seems to be, I don't know. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. We like I occasionally hear things about when it comes to the online networks and everything else with a background in security. I know people who work in the online security realm and everything else. There has been talks about the reasons behind some of the interruptions and issues that occur with particular platforms and being available in countries around the world. Um, as far as I have heard, or the last that I heard, there were particular elements about that that are being resolved in the background right now that they're trying to bring these issues to the forefront and deal with them. It's, however, then making sure that what they're doing and what they're providing, their terms of service and everything else also serve the markets in those areas, because they can't, it has to be, in a sense, boilerplate. So the PSN terms and condition services, everything else may have some specific restrictions when it comes to particular markets, but in terms the general boilerplate for all of those issues are covered by their main terms of service, and then it is that they have region specific elements. Right now, as far as I was last made aware, the 130 countries that they cannot work with, and we've got Michigan and Twitch as well. G'day, sir. How you doing? Um, the 130 countries where those issues do exist, there are active efforts by Sony and a few other platforms out there that don't serve some countries to try and consolidate and work those issues out. Um, I'm I'm not certain. Like, it has been a few months since I heard anything on that. It was before, obviously, the Sony no discs future thing, but I'm hoping that as as far as it was indicated, it's like, well, we're now having to look at these things, because if we're not producing disc copies of games, it then means that we potentially lose those markets unless we're able to then serve those markets digitally. So they've been trying to uh, slowly make progress in that manner. And I'm hoping, I am very much fingers crossed, hoping that Sony do work in that, do work towards that. It's a very complicated process, but they've got some of the best people when it comes to like working out the issues, because you also think of Sony and don't, if you're not aware, Sony as their own distributor and everything else has, they have contracts and agreements to be able to serve their entertainment products, movies, music, games, and everything else to every market out there. But if they can't directly serve that market, they work with the distributor in that area. I think potentially they may end up working with distributors who will then be that in between. But when it comes to PSN specifically, they've uh like they try to be very protective of that, because it is their own publishing platform as well. And you don't want to kind of share the money from that unless you really have to. Um, but it's kind of, I'm hoping soon, hopefully my biggest hope is that Insomniac get get Wolverine out there. People get to actually play it and form their own opinions. Um, Previews don't always, like, Mishkin would be able to attest to this. They're because of their their job in the past. They've played previews, much like Sue Bagels and myself. There are some games that you play that preview fantastically. Like, you really get a feel for the game, and you're like, holy shit, this thing is going to be fucking amazing. And then you get to the launch game, and you're like, where did the fun go? Like, this isn't right. Um, but then there's some games which are complete dark horses. You play it for a few minutes and you're like, and the developer will go, oh, this is a development version from a few months back. It'll all be good. And you're like, oh, it's not that great. And then it comes out at launch and people start raving it. And you're like, yeah, I tried it at a preview event. It wasn't that great. And they're like, no, stop, play it now. It's fucking amazing. And you jump in there and you're like, holy shit. Like, I don't know what it was, but like this extra 3-4 months of polish plus the 3-4 months of work that we hadn't seen most recently comes together to a fucking amazing game. So I honestly think that's where Spider-Man, like Insomniac is going to end up, but it's surprising to see that level of, I would call it misplaced frustration with Sony. And I'm hoping that in time they definitely will either make their future ideas and plans more consistent and explain it to the audience. If you're going to take away an option, you should always be making sure that your customer feels more served by the removal of a choice, that they feel that they still got the better end of the deal. Like, you want to win the digital only platform, drop all your games back to $60, or drop them back to, like, your standard editions are just $100 Australian flat or $90 flat. You offer a discount to your customers on all games going forward and go, like, the ceiling or the standard price or MSRP goes from $69.99 USD before taxes to $59.99 USD. If you do that, you're going to sell people on it because they're going to be saving money. However, it still doesn't negate the fact of a physical game with 100, 50,000 copies bought into Australia, distributed all over the place. Some people are maybe too busy, they don't buy it. Then as that physical copy gets marked down in the sales system, because it's sold in but not sold through. So sold in is that it's sold to a retailer, your EB Games, your JB Hi-Fi, your Walmarts, your Best Buys, all of that. Sold through is when the game comes into a retailer and is sold to a customer, you. The copies of physical games still exist in the sold in, but not the sold through. So a game that comes out, say for example, like let's use Halo as an example. We got told that Halo didn't do fantastically well on PlayStation, like sold 1 million, and it's like, okay, cool, 1 million still 1 million. But say that Xbox actually produced 2 million copies of Halo Campaign Evolved on PlayStation on disc, and they sold 2 million copies through to all of the retailers in America. They've sold 1 million. So that's gone down by 1 million. There's still 1 million copies physical. Now, what happens in the retail sector is that those 1 million copies still exist there, and they've got a value attached to them. So Microsoft has sold these copies to their retailers and gone, if you sell one of these copies for $70 USD, you receive X amount of this sale amount. We make this much of it. Generally, I think it's a 25 to 30, depending on scale split, where there's a profit margin generally around 8 to 10%. Could be higher, could be lower. It's a long time since I worked in retail for video games. But the retailers will go, well, okay, we've got all these copies. It's now like 2, 3, 4 months later. They've still got 1 million copies of this game. And all of these retailers are going, well, these games aren't moving off our shelves. What do you want us to do? Because we don't want them. They're not selling. We should send it back to you for credit for the full amount of what we've paid. Xbox or Sony don't want to then have to pay back that money and take ownership of these copies of the games left. What they will do is they'll go, okay, instead of selling it at 70 USD, how about we'll change, or you change the price to 50 or 40 USD. You still make your cut of X% and we'll take less money, because that then saves them having to have the copies of the game shipped back to them, and then these copies potentially sitting on a shelf end up being written down as stock, being sent out to other retailers, coming back, sending out until all of those copies are sold. This is one of the issues of physical games that nobody really talks about, is the stock investment that occurs and how much that then impacts. Now, this works in the favor of the customers, that if you hold off buying a game, you can get it for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And a lot of physical game collectors will wait for games, and they will let them discount heavily. They may own them digitally, they may have bought them outright, but then 2 years later, you might be able to grab like 5 of the previous couple of years' games for like $15 each. Or potentially you pick them up pre-owned, or somebody's having a garage sale because they're moving, and it's just like, okay, fuck it, let's get them out of here. That works in the favor of the customer. And that, I think, is where especially the Twitter accounts and social media accounts for Stop Killing Games, and the platform systems out there that are doing the Sony boycott next week. That's one of those aspects that not many of them are talking about, because that's what actually serves the customer. Issues may get resolved if Sony come forward and be more upfront with their customers. I wouldn't expect so, but I'm honestly hoping for it, because I think there isn't a way to be able to get them to reverse course, but there is a reasonable way to be able to help them understand and be able to change some of their methodologies that would make people more confident. And I think confidence and trust is being underutilized, and I think it's being attributed to the return of arrogant Sony. If anybody remembers Sony end of PS2 into PS3 era, you understand what I'm saying when I say arrogant Sony. It is the 599 USD. You will want to work more hours to be able to afford our console because you know it's worth it. Hit the giant enemy. This game is based on ancient Chinese battles. Hit the giant enemy crab in the weak spot for massive damage. There's whole realms of memes about that. I'm honestly looking forward to seeing what Sony do. I don't think they will remain silent for too much longer, but I'm hoping that instead of them coming out and trying to tell people to take a chill pill and relax and that they're not changing their mind, that they come forward with something, a sweetener, a way to be able to make it more palatable. Because I think that's where we will see a lot of people go, okay, now for everyone, you may not go, okay, $10 off the major price of games. That works for me. Understandable. It may help some people be able to afford things a little easier. I still think physical is the way around it, and that is just a sheer reality. The platforms, I think, are still trying to understand and work out how they can do this in the easiest way possible. We know of the Xbox Positron idea, digital games, then creating physical games, then creating a digital copy that gets signed into your account, and then you own that unless you lend the disc out to somebody. That's a good move. And especially when I did the Xbox 2+1 with Jez, it was something that we kind of like touched on and he'd spoken about, that the idea of having that as a way forward to be able to digitize those games into the future, just having an Xbox console, or potentially even with retailers just going, okay, cool, sign into your account here, you bring in your physical games to us, and you can then, like, we use this system to be able to tie these games to your account. That would work well, and Sony could work out a way to be able to do that. But that could be very much outside a difficulty range of what they're willing to kind of put towards it. The casual gamer is more where they're looking at the moment, and fair call. It's all about money in the end. It's just about, you can serve both markets. How you do it can be very a very strange tightrope to walk, I think, is probably the best way to put it. So on that, like, away from that, the Wolverine previews, I think we wait and see the game itself. I think it'll surprise people, and some people are absolutely going to love it. Yeah, Sony isn't going to back down on their word. Absolutely. I don't think they will ever back down on it, because I want to be fair to them. Sony have had success with being able to stamp forward their own ideal, and they like to push for what they believe is the future. Sometimes they change that wildly, like, obviously, games as a service hasn't exactly gone well for them. Japanese companies, where physical is so important in Japan, they're moving the industry on. Yes, I think it is really that. Gaming with Passion in Twitch as well. I would pay extra for a physical copy if it had the full game. If they cannot fit the full game day one, they can always release physical later. Interesting point on that. A few of the physical game publishers out there have been talking about the idea of, one aspect that they have talked about is that if Sony do not wish to continue down that route, they understand it, but they are still of the position that they want to be able to purchase the discs. But Sony are saying that they will not create physical copies of those discs from 2028 onwards, or January 2028 onwards. However, they will still fill priorly released physical copies for those games in smaller production runs, where obviously it's then going to have a longer lead time, because they're not going to have as much production capacity. It'd be reduced, and then they would then be potentially shared or outsourced to other disc creators. The surprising watch Sony discontinue the disc console in 28, 29 and just have the digital only. I think, Mishkin, that we will see Sony discontinue the disc console in its entirety. We're in 26, right? We're in 08 of 26. I would not be surprised if the next, let's have a look. Considering what I know about production runs and everything right now, especially with RAM allocations, Sony obviously have much, much bigger allocations across time. I was expecting that Sony would have a price increase late September or late October, because their previous price change that occurred, I believe it was March, April, May, somewhere around there. That price increase indicated that the RAM costings that they'd had and the contracts that they had for those components ran out, and then they had to then negotiate new deals to be able to then get the components and everything else. The one thing that is actually surprising in terms of manufacturing is that even the biggest consumers of RAM parts, boards, accessories, everything else, is that even the biggest companies out there, they are not getting anything more than a 6-month agreement for pricing for components. So I'm expecting that Sony will have a price increase, or an indication of a price increase, that would end up hitting late November or possibly January. So they may try to push it so that they may go, okay, late November, GTA comes out, and they go, we are going to have a price increase for the price of the PlayStation consoles. Due to price variations in elements, we will be discontinuing the disc consoles. You will only be able to buy a a PlayStation 5 Pro with a disc. Actually, no. Does the PlayStation 5 Pro come with a disc? Let's have a look. Because I think it does. Looks like we're gonna have to win at the GTA. Continue to purchase purchase PS6. Yeah, you will. Um, honestly, the the price of them is going absolutely okay. So the PlayStation 5 Pro does not come with a disc. With a disc point, I'm looking at the EB and JB websites here. They are just the standard digital console. Now, uh, not sponsored by Rainbet. Please gamble responsibly. Um, yeah, right now it's like for Australia here for one of our major retailers. You're looking at $13.99 roughly for a PlayStation 5 Pro console, no disc. A PlayStation 5 Slim console is $1,000, and that is the 1 terabyte. I believe that's the 1 terabyte. Oh God, tell me it is actually the 1 terabyte. Yeah, 1 terabyte of storage. Now, here's the thing. $999 Australian for a PlayStation 5 Slim. Now, that PlayStation 5 Slim does have a disk drive in it, but the 825 gigabyte PlayStation 5 Slim Digital is $919. $1,000, $920 for a PlayStation 5 Pro with 1 terabyte of internal space, and a Slim Digital is $80 cheaper with 825 gig of internal space. But a PlayStation 5 disk drive for the PS5 Digital Slim and the PS5 Pro is $124. I think what we will see is that when the next price announcement comes through for changes to the 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 platforms and everything else, what Sony's charging, everything else, um, those things will basically they will go, oh, if you want to get a PlayStation 5 with a disc drive, everything else, they're only going to stay at this price until Christmas, first or last week of January. The prices will be going up to this, and the digital consoles are going to be the only consoles that are sold ongoing. So they'll have the PlayStation 5 Pro and they'll have the PS Slim Digital. Those two will be it, and they will continue to sell the disc drives at fair whack, which is the price and the console difference is about $80, but they're charging 124, so they're making a good margin on it. That will be their push, and I think they're going to do it for the year prior to the discontinuation of discs, because then it's kind of expected throughout that next week that they're for the next year, that they're going to have more games throughout next year. They're going to push that forward. It's going to be like, oh, you have to play these games, and just keep pushing it through on the digital. And they'll release physical where they can, but they know that it's lesser, or it's lesser in the markets that they're worried about. Um, and that, like, oh, sorry, I missed a few comments here from Michigan. Just like what will be happening with the iPhone and Apple products in general. Yeah, like Apple got bent over the cart when it came to USB-C, but now they don't include a charger. They just include the cable. It's all about trying to pull down these margins and make everything work in their favor. Hey, OMG Turtles. Can't say today, just popping in to say have a great stream. Thank you very much, sir. You, with whatever it is you're up to today, I appreciate you popping by. And yes, we'll try to continue chatting along. Hopefully you have a great day. Um, stay safe, stay busy. Um, the the hope that I have is that with whatever changes occur, I think if Sony's smart, if you're going to go all digital, you drop the prices a little bit. The the You serve your hardcore market by not charging them as much. If you really want to push the casual market, you need to bump the pricing or maybe the cut that you're taking on those microtransactions that come from your Robux and your Fortnite. What are they? Fortnite coins, whatever the fuck it is, V-Bucks. That's it. Um, Push up your charging for that, because you should, if you're going to be making money and the idea is to make money, use that to be able to serve your hardcore market, because they're the people who then sell everyone on the next version of the console. Because as much as people are bought in, the one thing that is the greatest risk in this generation into the next is that previous generations, PlayStation 4 was hands down, like, I don't think anybody could argue that PlayStation 4 was not the winner of the last generation. Absolutely was. The Switch was a fantastic piece of gear, but PlayStation kind of ran away with it throughout that period of time. They really excelled. Now, like Phil Spencer said, it was the worst generation to mess up in, because it's where people started developing their digital libraries. Those digital libraries matter a great deal, except your digital libraries going from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, that's there for the hardcore gamers. But you've sold the same amount of consoles, and your console base is spending more money in the casual games. They're buying their Maddens, their FIFAs, their live service games, everything else, and it's making you money. But for the next console, those casual gamers, they're not going back to play Madden 24 or Madden 23. Very rarely. Like sometimes they'll be like, oh, but I had a really good FIFA Ultimate Team in this. You go back and play it. But those games are best served across all manners, and especially with EA now being owned by the Saudi group and the venture capital, they will probably try to link and have not just crossplay but cross progression between those platforms, because if you're now trying to monetize that market, you want to make sure that that market is able to spend everywhere they can, and you create that by making sure that wherever they buy, it serves their account. You will very rarely be able to have those whales work across different platforms. But if you give it all to them in one platform, then they know it's going with them. They're willing to spend more. Hence why, like, Fortnite does really well with kind of those big skin packs, where they're able to just kind of push it and be like, well, it doesn't matter. It goes everywhere. You could play it on your Xbox. You could play it on your PlayStation. You could, use your phone, use your Switch, whatever. The risk is the next gen. Whether a PlayStation 6 or the Xbox Helix, or who knows if Nintendo's going to do anything, at least for another like 5-10 years. They may push the Switch out and until it absolutely rubber band snaps again. But if you're depending on the same sort of, that was my collie snoring, if you heard that. The the brilliance and kind of potentially strange part will be next gen, because PlayStation had moved upon the success of the PlayStation 4 into the PlayStation 5. The hardcore really bought into it. We had COVID. They were selling out everywhere. We had scalpers and everything else. Same with the Xbox. They were selling out everywhere. And then that disparity of supply and demand and everything else, PlayStation just committed hard and pushed hard. Xbox seemed to be doing that, but didn't commit in that same manner. And they're now kind of suffering for it. But when it comes to next gen, if most of the PlayStation players and their own numbers are telling them are casual gamers, they're not people who are playing, they're not buying Insomniac's latest game, they're not buying Saros, they're not buying Marvel Tokon, which disappointing. Apparently, it's really fun fucking game. If you're a fighter fan, you should be playing it. They're not playing those games, but what they are potentially going to have an issue with is trying to then get those casual gamers to jump across to the PlayStation 6, because those casual gamers are going to follow where they see the majority of people move. But if you're not serving your hardcore market well enough, they're not going to move with you to a PlayStation 6. You have to keep selling them on that next thing. And right now, Sony is so kind of like locked in on this idea of we have to keep the casuals happy. Like, we've sold the consoles, we need to monetize people more. That works until you push that one thing too far. And it can happen with a particular skin, it can happen with a particular concept or push point, or okay, now we're changing the splits, and it can be developers pushing back, it can be publishers pushing back. Those are bigger risks when it comes to trying to move a casual market through, because a casual market isn't paying for the games, they're paying what they want into them. And if those games and those accounts then go to another piece of hardware, they will just go, I'm out, onto my phone, onto a Switch, onto an Xbox, onto my PC. There's 100 different entry points. The hardcore, though, have memories occasionally like a Civ, but they've also got memories like steel traps when it comes to if they feel that they've been taken advantage of. That could be a risk. It's very much a risk, especially for Xbox, in how they're positioning and talking about where their future is and how they're talking about it. That does have a counter risk. You say you want to serve the console market, but you haven't served it for so long in a manner that the console players feel stands up against the opposition. And that is then, how do you change that? And it's a interesting aspect, because this kind of ties into the Modern Warfare 4 beta stuff that was announced last week, and also the Elder Scrolls 6 star, possible Sentinel, whichever it may be. Those aspects then create a potential discussion point, which I don't really want to jump into it too much. The idea of, could Elder Scrolls 6 be exclusive? Yeah, it could. Is it likely to be exclusive? I don't know. I absolutely do see reasons why. If you want to sell a piece of hardware, exclusives, do it. And there's a there's a whole run of stuff. If somebody wants to go and buy a PC and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars just to play Elder Scrolls 6, then you weren't going to pull that person to just buy an Xbox instead. They already wanted to go there. All you've done is just made it easier for them to go, well, I'm stopping here and I'm going over to there. If they had an Xbox, they would just go, oh, okay, well, Game Pass, I'll just play it there. But the idea of Elder Scrolls 6 is so very much pushing people into a frenzy, because the idea of one of the biggest potential sequels coming up going exclusive, absolutely. I would be I would be very remiss if that news dropped and they went absolutely what Elder Scrolls 6 is Xbox PC, Steam only. You know what? I would absolutely be like, holy fucking shit. I'm very much glad that there seems to be that manner back, or that push back towards understanding the what the gaming console ecosystem needs. And it's a case of the competition that used to be the serving market was was seen as archaic. And to a degree, yeah, I would say it's archaic. The idea of, console warring between people, it doesn't really serve anybody. Um, but you know what? It is fun to watch. And it it like there is that little bit of Schadenfreude for everyone, whether you're a fan of the green, the blue, the red box, doesn't matter. Like watching people on other platforms kind of go, fuck, why isn't that over here? Um it is just that little bit of like, hey, we've got this game, or shit, I want to play that game. And it works. It really does. Like my partner got a PlayStation 4, not for God of War, not for Spider-Man, not for Death Stranding, not for Horizon Zero Dawn. They got it for Persona 5. And considering that they played through it and I was watching them play through it, sitting on the couch watching them play through it, I would go to work and come home. They're on break, or they're on holiday, so they were just playing through it, and I'd get home and we'd sit outside and smoke, and she would fill me in on all of the story beats and things that had happened while I was at work, and then we'd be sitting down like eating dinner while she's playing through it. And I think I'm generally a person who goes to bed pretty early. I think we were staying up until like midnight every night, um like watching her play through it and into the palaces and then the daily life stuff, and it was amazing. But that, in a sense, was the only time where it's kind of like FOMO, like, holy shit, yeah, gotta get this. Like, I got a PlayStation 5 because someone was selling theirs on, and it's like, for $150 off, yeah, I'll grab this. um and Uh, Ghost of Yotai is really great. Watch my partner play through that. But that's been about it. Was the Ghost of Tsushima um supplementor. I got FOMO of the Fantaskin campaign evolved after the promotion ended. Actually, what is the deal with that Fantaskin for that campaign? Um, it looks so different from Fanta that we get here in Australia. I don't know. I think it might be a friend of mine said that like Fanta in the United States is um like Fanta here in Australia uses like cane sugar as the sweetener. Um but over in the US it's kind of like they use different colorings, and it's like corn syrup for the sweetener. And he said like going over there and trying it. It's called. I'm popping that into it. It looks so bad and funny. I call it the golden shower skin. That damn auto mod, I keep setting it lower and lower, and um, it just keeps setting. Uh, I keep changing it. I keep switching it off, and it keeps grabbing messages. Like it should be fine. Like I've switched it off. Like if it does catch stuff, please tell me so that I can train this thing. Yeah, it does focus in on words, but I've listed so many words and elements in there to ignore because I'm like, let people talk. As long as you're not talking about Nazis or any of that sort of shit in there, then it's generally all good. And kind of particular slurs and the like. Um, that Fanta skin was like my friend who'd had American Fanta was just like, oh yeah, it's like Fanta over there is a completely different color. Like over here, it is very much like sunburst orange, and yeah, it looks more yellow and everything. And he was just like, yeah, it tastes weird. It doesn't look the right. It doesn't look like the right color or anything else. It, it, just one of those weird little aspects. Um, it's also we're burning through the time here. We're at an hour 20. I'm gonna have to be finishing up reasonably soon. Unfortunately, as I did at the start of the stream, I did say that yeah, I will stream again on Thursday and then again on Saturday my time. So it'll be um Thursday morning for the UK. It will be um I think it's a very late Wednesday night for the US. And then I think on Saturday I'm actually going to try and stream after XB2 if the guys record on that day. It's unfortunately with family stuff, operations and bits and pieces and everything else, plus new staff and a whole run of work. So it is even just the case of I got home and it was like heading towards 5 o'clock, and I'm like, I've looked at the clock and then just realized, and I'm like, shit, tonight is one tonight's my night to stream, and it's like, and ask the question, am I going to do it? And like, fuck yeah. It's just one of those things. And then while Fika's arrived, which adds to the stream experience. Fika has arrived. Fair call. Um, uh, but one of the elements of that was went and uh, basically went and had a shower, and then jumping out of the shower drain has decided to absolutely block itself up. So then spending 20 minutes like clearing that out. It's like, wow, I'm having the best week so far. Um, but on top of that, like just whole runs of work, but I'm still gonna keep doing my streams on Thursday and Saturday at this point. Fika is the Swedish brand equivalent of coffee break. I have a cup of coffee and cookies. Good Trump reference. Um, uh, it's yeah, the the kind of news and everything else. Elder Scroll 6, like for anybody in chat, like if like I remember playing Daggerfall. Like I played Arena, I think just either before or after Daggerfall came out. Like I've been playing the ESO game, like the Elder Scrolls series since its inception. I'm old. Um, but at the same time, with how people respond, especially with how big Skyrim is, I don't know if it going exclusive would really impact people, because I feel that Skyrim is more the exception, not the rule. I don't know if people would look at whatever Elder Scrolls 6 would be and go, "Oh my god, I remember Skyrim. That was so great. I have to play this." Because I think there's like 65 million plus copies of Skyrim that are sold since it released in November 11th. November 11th, 2011. Um, so no, that's fair call, Suplordo. Like throw in your shout outs. I'm always chill with people like having their opinions on the politics. Because generally, yeah, if it's a joke, we're all good. Um, the other interesting thing, trying to think more specifically in terms of the news and everything else, it's hold on, we've got trying to think more specifically the oh, I figure like the only kind of like finishing out topic would be the specifics of the Activision rumor that Jez spoke about a few months ago and has now been kind of spoken about by Rebs Gaming, that Activision and potentially Sledgehammer Games. Now, I can say that I know people at Sledgehammer Games, but the people that I know there have never at any point indicated this. But that is by no means saying that it's absolute horseshit, because Sledgehammer Games is like 2 or 3 locations and hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people. So it is never a simple, like, straight off the bat, if, oh, I know people are there and they never dealt with this. That doesn't mean shit. Like, video game studios do silo off people and go, you can't talk about this, you have to work on this, and it is under this code name, and people don't know shit. The idea of Activision or Activision Studios working on Halo, I think there is, like, considering it's Jez who said it quite some time ago as something that they were hearing, and then more particular reporting, you know, as is always the case, you can never be certain on reporting, because you can never know whether that same source is serving 1, 2, 3, 4 people the same story, and then it becomes a confirmation through that. It's generally why, when it comes to a lot of reporting, if it's a case like Jason Schreier, I respect greatly, tends to have his specific reporting be, I have a source, I have source, I have source, and it's never about using one to confirm the others. It is about letting those sources speak individually and then being able to cross-reference particulars that they have crossover on, to be able to confirm whether the underlying information is correct, and that you are getting context around these issues. Look at you, Coda. Like, what can you do? The dog appears and you have to look after him. The Xbox 2 podcast today, they specifically, like, back and forth on the idea of it. The interesting part was, in a sense, that potentially having Halo Studios work in the oversight function similar to World's Edge. And I think there could potentially be a really good aspect to this, which is that the control of Halo as a series has generally been through Bungie, and then to 343, and then 343 having its leadership changes, and then it becomes Halo Studios. Now, a lot of people have pointed at the issues that occurred, or the issues that they found with Halo Campaign Evolved, and saying, and then the reporting stating that Ascension Studios and other groups, that their work did not end up becoming as well planned out. I wish Microsoft didn't own Halo's rights. The interesting thing would be that if Halo had stayed with Bungie, I don't know that it would have continued past that point, because it was very much, Jason Jones had originally agreed to do Halo 2, like a sequel, and then kind of bailed out on that. And then Halo 3, Halo ODST, Halo Reach being that part of the agreement to separate themselves from Microsoft. I think Bethesda is probably the key, that if we were to look at what is going to happen with Halo, that you look at Bethesda and the announcement there, Todd Howard going, okay, we're working with Obsidian, and they are going to work on their own Fallout game. We are doing the remakes of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and we are then going to move into um, a Fallout 5, and we're still working on Elder Scrolls 6. The idea of branching everything out and having kind of a core team working on it. It's absolutely the Fallout remakes. I'm very much looking forward to, because they're also close enough in their release that it was, a lot of people found Oblivion remake to be such a breath of fresh air, because it was a very different style of game that was made at that time. That was the first. Oh no, that was still Gamebryo. Um, but Oblivion, in and of itself, then helped create what Fallout 3 is. And Fallout 3, while a lot of people don't see it as one of the better games, I think it's very well served as they were more bold with it. They didn't want to have those fleshing out the world and remaking parts of the main quest for Fallout 3 would probably serve it better, because they don't hold up as well as they used to. Um, because it ends up throughout the end of the game, it becomes very much dragging in the Enclave and the Brotherhood of Steel and everything else, and kind of having this convergence point that then changes the way that you're able to impact the world. It's more that you have to navigate how the world has been impacted. And that's kind of antithetical to the idea of um, guiding your own path through um, through the world and its aspects. It very much feels, in a sense, there we go, Coda. It very much feels like the end of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, because there's the Battle of Kvatch that you first are part of, and then the main kind of pushes. They can more make a more consistent Warzone and DZ ruins with more enemy density. I would be surprised if they don't really improve that area, because the DC ruins are so uh like in the game, the DC ruins are so expansive, but because of how it was for there, they didn't really build it out in a way to have it as a playground of battle. Um it felt more like a open world dungeon, like an above like a, on top, in the outside world dungeon without walls, that it was kind of like navigating through all of that and just having enemy patrols. That would definitely be an interesting idea for it. Is, yeah, that Warzone, that constant push and pull between the Enclave, the Brotherhood of Steel, some of the ghouls and other fighters out there. That would be very cool to see, actually. Virtuos at least kind of did some of those things when it came to changing up the way the questing systems were in Oblivion, to update them and have them work with a more modern sensibility. So you could definitely see that happening. I think it was also like their backgrounding and work on the Gamebryo engine that allowed them to then kind of push it further without having the entire thing fall apart. They could actually throw in more enemies and more instances and more spells and more effects and things without that underlying engine falling over and dying, which thank God. Because yeah, Jesus, playing settlement faction conquests, mutants Brotherhood Enclave wrestle for control over the wasteland. That could that could definitely work, like similar to the Fallout 76, like having the pushes of enemies towards particular locations and then fighting them back. That'd be pretty good. I also wonder whether because they're still pushing a lot of content into Fallout 76. I do wonder if potentially those changes or movements in that manner, whether they're going to try to push out 76 to be a little bit more closer to what they will do with the Fallout 3 New Vegas remakes, because it would be definitely something that I would imagine that they will have possibility for. Uh, the I think it will be how they interpret a lot of the kind of general destruction, the the detritus, the kind of ruined buildings and everything else, because you generally, for those areas, once you've played enough Fallout 3, you just kind of walk past it because you go, there's going to be like a handful of containers in there. There'll be a few caps, there'll be a few bullets, maybe a med kit. That's about it. That's all you would ever find there. But the idea of those destroyed buildings, ruins, was always the idea or the thought that when you go to Fallout 1 and 2 would be, if you had a spade, like digging in some of those particular locations, you might find a door that goes to an underground area there where it could be a cache of weapons, could be mutants, could be rats, you know, could be a pathway that then leads to a vault door. There was always that potential. And I think perhaps if they're going to go back to Fallout 3, the idea of having more of those hidden vaults or potentially like sealed vaults sitting there that you could really do something with to just kind of like fuck with the established order, that'd definitely be very cool. Um, yeah, I think the like finishing up on that thought, the Sledgehammer Games World's End kind of oversight for Halo, I think there's definitely a possibility there. Um, a lot of people are saying that or a lot of the discussion points are that Halo Studios should get rid of Pierre, the current studio director, bring in somebody else. Um, I think it's still a little too early in that it's there's still too much of trying to serve the previous masters that is still kind of hanging over the heads, because a lot of people are going, oh, you know, um, Oblivion Remake being the lackluster graphical upgrade of the same game from 2006. Yes, it was. However, Oblivion, in terms of a game, was so like it sold incredibly well on PC. It sold amazingly well on Xbox, but it didn't sell anywhere near what they did with Fallout, Fallout 3, or New Vegas, or obviously Skyrim or Fallout 4. The interesting part will be that they now have a bedrock foundation of understanding how they can work with that engine, how they can build on top of it. And I would not be surprised if parts of these remakes and everything else have also been an extension and an expansion of understanding the engine underneath it, to be able to then start working in that manner. Like Bethesda Game Studios, there are staff there and people, especially even modding communities. I think that any of the further remakes down the line, because Fallout 3 and New Vegas had very extensive creations and mods and everything else, that you could potentially start working in your own creation club, work there, which I think was hinted at. The idea that if they're going to push anything forward, they want to kind of bring the best of the community with them, because there are people who are still doing Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4, even Oblivion mods, to this day. So I do wonder. Um, but unfortunately, we are heading towards 8:30 p.m. here in on the east coast of Australia. And I am unfortunately going to have to call it there, because I have a 5 a.m. wake up, and I've got a dog who's eating his own back leg. You okay there, Coda? Yeah, he's okay. He just loves chewing on his paws and like throwing him around the place. It's what two brain cells rubbing together decides to do with his life. Um, but yeah, we'll call it there. I will be back on Thursday. Hopefully with a little bit more to cover. But I have to admit, it's actually nice to just get away from it. It has been such a absolute blast of a week that I I'm still trying to get my head around a consistent schedule. It is still at this point Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And I'm just trying to work out, once I have everything locked in and being able to set a time, it will then be making sure that all of these things come together very quickly so that there's a consistent schedule. And I've already programmed a little system to be able to go, okay, you know, I go live on this time, and it'll work out where you are based on location and go, cool, he'll be going live at this time for you, and so on and so forth. So we're going to call it there, but thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Suppalordo and Mishkin and everybody who dropped by. It was great to see you, Sue Bagels. If you're still chilling out here and there in the background, it is. Oh, and now I'm hearing from the dog. I have to take him out. So I appreciate everybody who swung by. Enjoy yourself. I would say like and subscribe, but apparently considering Twitch now wants to train all of the AI based on what we're doing, and YouTube has just gone and decided that they want to up views and tank monetization. I don't monetize this channel, but fuck all that shit. So I don't really care about the engagement on the channel. It's about being able to talk with people. Um, and yeah, and if you are worried about them chewing up your content, your data, or anything else, just potentially, if they're going to start doing it, I'm just going to name every stream to be say wanker in chat, and just tell people to just post wanker in there, because nobody's going to look at the streams and go, oh yeah, let's not ingest that because it's just a whole bunch of people saying wanker, 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 wanker. They're just going to ingest it. And the AI is going to learn that some people are talking about video game stuff, and then the response to that is wanker. So maybe we might just poison the AI a little bit, potentially. So as is always the case, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody who stopped by. If you're watching this later, please feel free to enjoy, comment, subscribe, like all of that sort of stuff if you so choose. But this isn't done to engage the system. It's about talking with you. And as is always the case, make sure that whatever you do in every day, every moment of your life, it should be about making sure that at the end of the day, you can go to sleep knowing that you did the best that you can. Some days you won't sleep well, but the important thing is that you go and you enjoy life and you try to do the best that you can every single day. Always aim for that, and you'll have a great life. The dog is calling. Thanks very much, everybody. Hope you have a great night. We'll catch you for the next stream.